The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon and good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kevin Davidson, and I'm joined today by my colleague David Jones. July 14th is, of course, Bastille Day in France. The revolution we're talking about is a technological one, and we're going to discuss the part that localization is playing in it.
That's right. Now, some of us may be further along in this journey. Some of us may be more comfortable with the direction we're heading in, but we're all essentially on the same road.
We'd like to take you through a review of some of the fastest creatures in the history of this planet. The cheetah is the fastest land animal alive. It reaches speeds of 72 miles per hour.
Yes, moving down, Usain Bolt, the fastest human being on record, touched 27 miles per hour at his peak.
And on a very good day, I could struggle along at approximately 12 miles per hour. That's the equivalent of running 10 kilometers in 60 minutes.
And all the way back here, we find the T-Rex. Now, if you analyze the depth and distance apart of dinosaur footprints, you can tell how fast they were moving. And the T-Rex lumbered along at just 5 miles per hour. So what?
Well, if you're big, noisy, and slow, you are heading for extinction.
If, on the other hand, you're smart and agile and focused, you keep evolving.
And here's where we reach a quick question for you to think about. How far has your organization progressed on your localization technology journey?
We're talking to you about a technology solution today, and there are different levels of solution that deliver different levels of freedom, different levels of control, and different levels of competitiveness. Now, we've identified 5 stages. There's the T-Rex option, which is to let technology leave you behind and, frankly, to invite extinction. And then there are 4 recognizable stages of technology adoption and leadership that we'd like to talk to you about. We believe this is your roadmap to commercial success in the 2020s. And in the first instance, we've identified each stage with someone in the public eye who you may be familiar with.
So stage 1 is centralization. This is a stage for a company at the early stages of their localization journey. So the person we've identified with it is Emma Raducanu, an 18-year-old British tennis player who reached the 4th round at Wimbledon last week. That introduced her to the general public and marked the beginning of her career journey. Is that where you are on your localization technology journey?
Now, stage 2 is scalability. The person we've identified it with is Ed Sheeran. Ed turned 30 earlier this year. I think we can all agree that the first phase of his career has gone well, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to him next. So is this you? Are you just completing phase 1 of your localization technology journey?
Stage 3 is connectivity, and we've identified it with Regina King. She's an Oscar-winning actress whose career journey has been successful, but far from complete. She's now moving into directing. This person who's come a long way and intends to go further. Is that where you are in your localization technology journey?
Stage 4 is consultation, and football fans may recognize Roberto Mancini, who's the manager of the Italian national team. Now, he had a successful career as a player, and as a manager, he's won trophies in multiple countries. And apologies to our English listeners, but 3 days ago, he led Italy to the European Championship title. Now, Mancini has climbed the mountain, and he's right at the top. Is this where you are in your localization technology journey?
So, who are you? Are you Emma, Ed, Regina, or Roberto? Please, would you cast your votes now? We'd love to find out. And we will share them afterwards, of course, as well. So, if you're able to, if you just clicked on one of those answers, perhaps. Are you Emma, Ed, Regina, or Roberto?
Always an interesting moment. This reminds us of the Eurovision Song Contest. Okay, thank you for voting. The results aren't a shock. It seems we have more Ed Sheerans than anything else. What we'd like to do now is walk you through these stages in a little more depth.
So, so the first stage is centralization. When companies take their first steps on the localization journey, they create a central team with the first set of central processes. They set about creating language assets, but they don't necessarily have control of those assets. This is the most elementary milestone, but also in many ways the toughest one, because many internal stakeholders still need to be persuaded that the centralization is something of value.
Yes, when you get to scalability, the second stage, the company is saving money and exercising greater control over quality and brand consistency. Now, as they face increasing volumes of translation, their basic technology is not sufficiently scalable, and it's time to switch to a translation management system, and ideally, a vendor-neutral translation management system, because that gives them the tools to control their own assets and make informed spending decisions.
Then there's stage 3, connectivity. The enterprise now has clearly defined procedures. The technology enables savings, quality, and brand consistency, and delivers proof of return of investment thanks to advanced analytics provided directly from the translation management system. Now, content management integration connects you to the content source directly. Machine translation solutions are integrated, and what we see here represents the highest level of automation. If any of you are asking yourselves right now, don't scalability and connectivity sometimes go hand in hand? The answer is yes, sometimes they do.
Yes, and in the next and final stage, a localization team here within an enterprise is seen as a group of thought leaders and advisors. It's proved its value by cutting costs, increasing quality, and winning new business. It's included in the earliest stages of product development. It has a major influence on business development decisions, and external localization teams function as an extension of the enterprise team, not just as a conventional vendor. So by this point, you're not just part of the team, you're right at the heart of the team.
And in every survey we've read or participated in, going back a decade, between 60 and 80% of consumers and business people have stated that communication in their own language makes them more likely to buy goods and services. Localization technology meets the need for high volume, swift turnaround communication and translation to and from lesser used, low resource languages in a way that human linguistic resources cannot match.
Yes, and just to give you a snapshot, in the 12 months from June 2020 to June 2021, 2,000 new language pairs have been added to machine translation systems, including many low resource languages. So localization technology enables immediate, high quality automated translation to and from languages that would otherwise be poorly, slowly, and expensively served.
And by automating what can be automated, localization technology gives linguists the time to do things that only people can do. That includes giving their full attention to cultural sensitivities of their target audience.
So, which tools are essential to your technology stack?
An effective translation management system is the bedrock of your localization process and the primary component of your technology stack. It's that simple.
Yes, and machine translation capability is the next essential element. Machine translation is the #1 technology investment for global business. 66% of agencies and 44% of in-house translation teams confirm that they are investing in this technology.
We might choose to add quality management tools, audio-visual translation tools, interpreting systems, a range of best-in-class connectors. We can add or omit other elements according to our taste. But if we don't have a translation management system and machine translation capability, we don't really have a burger, as you see on the slide. So, shall we take a look at how those components fit together strategically?
Okay, in terms of the nuts and bolts of your technology stack, this is where everything fits together. Firstly, of course, we have the T-Rex option. If you don't have translation management technology in place, your supply chain manages all of your assets, and quality control might not be within your control.
And then in centralization, you've carried out an assessment of language technology as part of your procurement process. And with a next generation translation management system, you're ready to move into the centralization mode.
When you get to the scalability stage, high volume management and high volume delivery is now possible. You have measurement processes in place that will enable you to scale. And strategically, you've normalized your supply chain to a new environment, your translation management system.
And we've reached connectivity. This stage adds in a layer of technology that is native to next generation systems. But you don't buy it all when you buy the system. You choose what you need.
That's right. And when you move to the final stage, consultation stage, this level of localization maturity enables you to add new business groups and scale at organizational level. You can extend the localization service to departments that might not traditionally have seen that as an option. You can test the water in new markets at low cost by utilizing machine translation engines for your A/B testing. You have a solid set of procedures in place that gives you a platform to approach new markets and increase penetration in existing markets.
Right, so what we have here is a combination of the right technology and users who are willing to embrace it. What does it deliver?
Well, in summary, it delivers company-wide localization. It delivers low-cost entry to potentially lucrative new markets. And it delivers speed, savings, consistency, and procedural excellence. Now, when we were planning this webinar, we asked our clients which industries they saw as the best example of digitization and localization in action. This is what they said. So let's take a snapshot of what localization technology maturity means in the automotive sector.
Right. With the massive technical documentation, component catalogs, how-to manuals, and marketing material to share, automotive manufacturers need an efficient way of communicating with a global network of websites and dealerships.
They do indeed. Now, interestingly, there are over 100 million lines of code in each new car as it comes off the production line, and 20 million of those lines of code will be needed just to manage satellite navigation and in-car entertainment.
And manufacturers are seeking an edge, are implementing software that can be updated regularly. This decade will see software upgrades to our cars become a commonplace. And as expected, as upgrades and updates to our mobile devices. With rapidly changing configurations, manufacturers will need swift and ongoing translation of updates into hundreds of languages.
So the localization team in this sector that's reached stage 4 of the process that we talked about a few moments ago, the consultative stage, they will be actively influencing the company's next steps. So when a high-tech new component is in development or an existing component is being upgraded, the localization team will be aware of strides being made forward by the research and development team. They'll be part of the conversations about which markets to target, which original equipment manufacturers to engage with, which cultural barriers might come into play when you're focusing on, for example, Germany or Japan. The localization team will be absolutely central to the planning and the execution and ultimately the success of this new chapter. Now, we believe that is the essence of added value consultative localization.
We're sure you have your own ideas about the action you can take to move forward with localization. And here are just a few suggestions based on what our existing clients tell us they found helpful.
You might want to conduct a localization audit so you can benchmark yourself against competitors and establish a good starting position.
You can assess how localization technology can help you move forward. We've suggested a 3-year plan here. Your plan may initially be 3 months, or it may encompass the entire decade.
That's right. And of course, you want to take a look at the options available to you. Review the specific ways that technology partners can help you get where you want to be. And we'd like to finish with a snapshot of how far localization technology has come and where we can still find improvements that will add value.
Neural machine translation was a game changer in language service provision, but the technology underpinning it has plateaued. It is mature and known, and won't see much more improvement.
Yes, the same algorithms are widely used. And the key differentiator between engines is the availability of data to train those engines on. So effective management of source material is the key to quality of output. Now, with little current innovation in neural machine translation, the challenge for users lies in management of the nuts and bolts of source material, in the control of grammar and vocabulary, and educating neural machine translation engines to recognize language elements relies on the processing of vast amounts of online data.
While other forms of machine translation may enable us to recognize the door in front of us, NMT also recognizes the lock and puts the key in our hands. But human skill and ingenuity are still essential to us taking the final step.
That's right. Effective pre-translation data management and nuanced post-translation editing will help us unlock that door. And it's worth doing it because on the other side, the whole world is waiting for us.
Indeed it is. And you could have outrun a T-Rex. And 65 million years later, the human capacity for agility remains unchallenged, not only by dinosaurs, but also by machines.
Yes, because machine performance is still dependent on the nuance and the scope of the information we put in and the refinement we apply to what we get out.
The road to digital maturity has signposts that only people can read.
If you can read the signs, you're in a very good position to share your own message.
You are in a very good position to speak to the world.
We'd like to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. We'd also like to invite you to join us at these forthcoming events, and we'll, of course, be happy to share more information on them.
Also, before our Q&A session, we'd like to ask for your feedback via one more poll, if that's okay with you. Please, can you let us know what you'd like to help to happen after this webinar?
Thank you for joining us. We know you're busy people, and we hope you got something positive out of this. We certainly did. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks. We'll act on that feedback, of course, and any further information we can supply, we'll be delighted to do it. We've made some suggestions for the steps you can take to move forward with localization technology. We're sure you have ideas and questions of your own. If you'd like to have a conversation about this at no obligation, XDM International has recently assembled a team of language technology experts to offer ongoing advice and support. It's not their job to sell you anything. It's their job to share expertise and make your lives easier. So if you'd like to talk to one of them, please do let us know. And the head of that team, our colleague Alex Sakakis, is with us today. And he'll be very happy to answer any questions you might have right now. So the floor is open for questions. Thank you very much.
Have a good morning from Marcelo in Brazil at the moment on the questions. Hi, Marcelo. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, I see a question just there now. What is a good starting point for going about updating my technology stack?
Maybe I can jump in here. It's Alex. Hi, everybody. It's actually a very good question. I think there's no real response or no fine line there, but personal opinion is always to start with the source. So your technology stack that will be delivered afterwards, as would be localization or any supportive services to your source content, would only be effective if the source content is such, right? So the technology stack that is implemented there. Everything else outside of that, localization, et cetera, would be a good extension to it. So for example, it depends, of course, on your capabilities, on your budget, on your internal technology, I would say availability, generally speaking, in terms of resources and such. But if you are able to tackle the content source, content management system, web CMS or equal, and at the same time also introduce a translation management system to the equation, that would be, I would say, a very good first step. Now, of course, that can be extended, expanded, and also driven in many various directions, right? Also integrated with other services and tools. But I would say it all falls back to the source content, right? If the source content works, then the rest of the services and I would say technologies would also follow after that.
Thanks, Alex. Great. Okay. Question here from Julie. Julie's asking, when you get to stage 4, consultative stage, can you position yourself as an independent thought leader for your industry? I think the answer to that is yes. I think we can all claim thought leadership. It's up to us to, if you have an enthusiasm for the industry you work in, if you have an enthusiasm for the technology you work with, then I think thought leadership follows. You will become excited about the technology. You'll be excited about what it can do, and you become excited about sharing it. And one of the reasons I personally got into this industry was that I loved the enthusiasm of people. First of all, for communicating globally and speaking to the world, and secondly, for using technology in a way that benefits people. And I think one crucial point that I'd like to make to answer your question, Julie, is that there are people out there who still see automation and machine translation as a threat to their positions as linguists. The truth is very different. The truth is that a really good next generation machine translation system is only a threat to people who don't use it, because what it does, I think, as Kevin touched on earlier, is it automates things that can be automated and gives people more time to do the things that only people can do. That breeds enthusiasm. It makes people enthusiastic about the technology. And yes, I would say you certainly can become a thought leader. And if you'd like to reach out to us afterwards and talk to us about how we can put together, I don't know, joint webinars, joint marketing initiatives to share this enthusiasm and establish thought leadership, we'd be delighted to talk to you about that.
Another question in asking about, how many companies have got to the consultation stage? How long does that process typically take?
I think that the length of time it takes, it varies according to, I would say, the speed and enthusiasm with which it's adopted. Alex, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, sorry, David. I don't think I have a figure to add to that, like how many companies have gotten to that stage and how long does it take, right? I have to kind of agree with you, David, a bit there in terms of the drive to reach a certain state, right? I mean, you can find companies that have been attempting to grow their maturity over time and are still stuck, in the initial baby stages, if you may, or the infant stage of getting that forward, and you have companies that in a very rapid pace have moved directly into the consultation stage or beyond, so from a quantification perspective, I find it very hard to speak to it, but I think it is typically a reflection of the company's overall ability to adapt and to improve on various areas as part of processes and technology and everything surrounding that is affected, right? So how, generally speaking, dynamic the company is, and that typically is a driver that is inside of our industry or inside the confines of the localization team, but could also be more an external factor, right? Many companies, you will find that the top leading managers are the ones essentially driving that top down across the various groups and enable people to be able to reach those stages much faster than in other companies. So there's so many possible parameters, dependencies, and factors here that it would be very hard to give a specific response on, first of all, the number of companies, and secondly, on the duration of such an exercise, right? It could be literally anything.
I couldn't agree more. And one thing I'd say is what you need during this process is champions. You need localization technology champions. And if you have them not just in your localization technology team, if you have them in different departments who suddenly see the possibilities for their department, then that's a real winner. I think we've seen clients where, I think as we touched on earlier, because they adopt the technology with enthusiasm and commitment, the possibility of different departments having an effective localization process is opened up, and people within those departments see what can happen for them, and they become champions of the technology. And that's a wonderful thing. When you have that, a network of champions throughout your company, then you're really onto something, and that really does speed things up. So. Okay.
There's another question in from Marshall this time, from Prof. Langs. What are the steps we have to take into account and will influence the development and maturity of the technology?
Okay.
That's the question.
Sorry, maybe Dave, could you repeat that question for me? I'm not sure I fully understood it there, if you could. Or if I could find it somewhere.
So the question are, what are the steps and stages we have to take into account that will influence the development and maturity of the language technology stack?
All right, so we're looking at specifics here. I'm not sure, David, since you guys created the deck here, maybe you are more in a position to answer this question in terms of the what needs to be taken into account that influences the development and maturity of the technology. I got to think about this from my side, I got to be honest. Sure.
I mean, from our point of view, I would say, first of all, where are you? And if we've, when we talk about the T-Rex option, if there's anyone on the call who is in that category, certainly wasn't our intention to offend you. It's our intention to save you from extinction. If you're in a position where you haven't adopted language technology, then you're in a position where you don't have control of your assets. You don't have control of quality. So I think the first thing you need to say is, where am I? And what do I have control of? So in as well as looking at the different categories we've mentioned today, look at the things within those categories that we touched upon. Like, ask yourselves, when it comes to localization, what am I in control of? What am I in control of? And what do I want to be in control of? I'm sure everyone on this call wants to be in control of their quality procedures. I'm sure everyone on this call wants to be in control of their assets. We speak to clients who don't have a translation management system, and the result is that they will request translations from different language service providers, all of whom I'm sure are very professional, all of whom deal with linguists who are very professional. But it means their assets are scattered quite widely, and it means that the client doesn't necessarily have control over them, and doesn't necessarily have control over what they pay when they need to use this service. So I would say, point number one, do you want to be in control of that? Would it make your job easier? Would it cut your costs? Would it save your time? Would it bolster your quality if you were in control of these assets, if you were in control of these processes? So sit down and say, right, what am I in control of? What am I not? What do I want to be in control of? How do I get there? That would be my starting point.
Right, and I see there's one more question, kind of in continuation of that. What would be the next step after NMT? Well, I can start here from my side, David, and Kevin there, and just start giving a response on that. I think, first of all, we were not close to getting beyond NMT. There's still work being done here on various fronts, right, to create robust products out of what is currently NMT. And the results, while very positive, are still not necessarily, you know, for across the board at least, on that level that, you know, we can already look into what's beyond. But fundamentally and conceptually, I think there's already a lot of thoughts being headed in that direction, and that again affects our industry and maybe even beyond it, right? MT as a product is an extension of natural language processing, which is in a sense is an extension of artificial intelligence overall, right? AI has become the new norm. AI has become the new keyword. In the past 10 years ago within this industry, we would typically only talk about MT as if it was the only possible implementation of AI that we see that is of value. What I see here is a drive towards creating AI-enabled processes, workflows, continuation within the systems that are being put in place for the entirety of the technology stack that go beyond the constraints of language itself, right? We're talking about AI-driven mechanisms that support the preempts, AI-driven mechanisms that support the content selection, the LQA, and whatnot as part of this process. So from my perspective, I think it's more of an interesting discussion in terms of our view for the future. From my perspective, I see the expansion of the core, the fundamental concept of AI across the different functions and principles of our industry.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I would also say that I'm not sure if it's beyond NMT or side by side with NMT, but again, we touched on it earlier. It matters enormously what you put into the machine. If you have a tool that enables you to make use of vast amounts of data and feed that data into your machine, then you're going to get better results. So I would say that certainly one of the areas we're looking at, and one of the areas our clients are looking at, is what can we do to make the best possible use of the data that's out there. It's something we're working very hard on, and it's making sure that, again, while we can refine the machine, what we can also do is make sure what we're putting into it is as informative and as relevant and as wide-ranging as possible.
Thanks, David. And we have one more question, bit of a continuation on that, expanding to AI here. How will AI content creation impact the further development of the localization landscape? Will it then be AI plus AI, I assume, in the sense of AI content creation and AI translation as an NMT or MT? And does that sense then still make sense for the users and provide usable output? So maybe I can start again here, and I had the time to think a bit about it while you were talking there, David. So I can just start kicking this off. So the content creation via AI, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean that the content translation also has to be via AI or a machine translation, right? Quite the contrary, there will be cases and opportunities rising here where the human output or the human input will be quite influential to drive the quality of the AI content creation. In a sense, as a post editor now fixes essentially the translation of a machine and teaches the machine, same there, we would have people that need to influence somehow the content that is being created via AI or harvested by AI from different sources to influence the quality of that output, right? I think there's a general principle within our industry, which is, you know, what goes in goes out. I'm not going to use a different word for that, but essentially if the quality of the source is poor, then the quality of the target is also going to be poor, right? Translation can never overcome the source quality. At best, it can match that. So if we assume that the initial baby steps of the AI content creation will produce subpar quality as opposed to a human, right, then there will be a tremendous necessity for the localization and the subsequent steps there to be the ones introducing changes and fixes there. I would also say it grows an incredible opportunity within the industry itself to expand not only to the target translation, but as many companies already do, to utilize the localization process to also review the source, right? So create, I often hear the term, let's say, German English versus English English, right? So German companies, for example, offering an English that is not their native language, and then doing the actual localization process or a step before that, that is getting pushed into, let's say, a more, you know, I would say structured English and a more, you know, English, if you may use that expression here, right? Just as an example, of course, there are many such others out there. So I could see that their humans would also be able to tap in quite well. Fundamentally and ultimately, I think that the end goal would be for both these processes and whatever all the processes are in there to be fully AI driven, with humans effectively being the ones influencing how these function, creating the process, the foundation, rather than being the ones clicking the buttons and executing, as it is across the board, right? And I think we are simply adopters here of a broader stream of technology that is in front of us in so many different areas in so many different ways. So in a nutshell, I would see AI and the content source driving a further need for humans in the translation, and a lot of different opportunities for new processes and new selling mechanisms or new, you know, services being introduced, and ultimately that should drive an AI to AI implementation here. But that would be in the long run.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Correct.
As far as I can see, that was the last question we currently have in the list here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alex. As we said, we created the experts team for a good reason. We want to have the best and most knowledgeable people in the industry sharing their expertise, and it's great that Alex has been here today to do that. Thank you to everyone who's attended. Those of you who would like to hear more, we'll be delighted to tell you more, and we hope to see you again in future.
Oh yeah,
thank you very
make
much.
sure to send your questions in case you have any other ones that pop up today, tomorrow, or next week, next month, whenever. We're always happy to help. Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Right, bye.
Bye.